When we are designing our courses and considering who our students are, one of these considerations is where our students are coming from, with what previous qualifications, with what formal and or informal learning that will equip them sufficiently for succeeding on our learning programs. The DHET stipulates minimum admissions requirements for entry into undergraduate qualifications. In other words, the minimum levels of achievement required for access into these programs. And this relates to the National Senior Certificate and the National Certificate Vocational. These requirements are stipulated as the minimum requirements for higher certificate, diploma, and bachelor's degree programs. And those students normally would get on their matric certificates, their national senior certificates, or on their NCV. It would stipulate whether they've passed at a diploma or a bachelor's level. Do make sure that you're familiar with the two policies, which I've uploaded to this module on Blackboard. But let's look at the minimum admissions requirements for holders of an NCV, which you're probably not that familiar with. So, a diploma pass for an NCV stipulates that the students must have achieved at least 50% in 3 fundamental subjects, including the language of teaching and learning at the higher education institution, and achieve at least 60% in the 3 compulsory vocational subjects. Whereas for a bachelor's degree, they need at least 60% in 3 fundamental subjects, including the language of teaching and learning, and at least 70% in 4 vocational subjects. Now, the policy stipulates quite clearly what the fundamental and vocational subjects are, so you will need to familiarize yourself with this when you are writing your admissions policies. So, universities set their own admissions policies based on the DHET minimum requirements. And so the minimum requirements set by DHET guide universities in their own admissions requirements and their own admissions policy. But in addition to this, each academic program must have its own admission requirements in place that are related to the discipline and the field of study. So they'll be much more specific rather than the rather generic policy at an institutional level. Where relevant, the admissions requirements for professional bodies must be taken into account. So for certain of your education programs, your healthcare, your engineering, those professional bodies' admissions requirements are very specific and must be included. In addition to the basic admissions requirements, the academic programs may stipulate certain selection criteria. So, for example, a sports program might specify certain levels of physical fitness. Other programs might have criteria related to working or practical or vocational experience, and so on. Specific selection tools may be developed or used, such as portfolios, proficiency tests, aptitude tests, practical tests, personal interviews, medical and physical tests, and especially these would be used in instances of alternative admissions and selections, like via RPL. Some universities routinely use proficiency tests for all applicants as selection mechanisms for entry into certain programs. However, the important point is not to use these selection criteria as exclusionary mechanisms, but for placement in appropriate programs, and must be guided by the enrollment plan and must be fair and transparent. So it's selection as opposed to exclusion, selection to the appropriate program. And if your qualification is not suitable, then students could be advised on other programs that might be more appropriate to the formal qualifications that they're bringing with them and their work experience. So CPUT recognizes the importance of these mechanisms for broadening access to its programs, but at the same time sees the importance of these for informing the sorts of appropriate support that should be provided for students. One other consideration for admission selection is international applicants and applicants with international qualifications. And there are various national and CPUT policy requirements to deal with these, which I won't go into here, but which you will need to know about. I now want to look at admissions and selection for postgraduate qualifications, especially the PGDIP. Generally, admission to postgraduate programs is guided by indicators of academic excellence in previous studies. such as having achieved an average mark of 60% or higher in the previous qualification, which is at 1 NQF lower than the program being applied for. So as your admissions requirements would state the level that applicants must have, that level is set at the NQF level, which is one level below the entry level for your qualification. So for a PGDIP, it would be a bachelor's degree in a related field. It would be an advanced diploma or an equivalent degree. Alternative access, such as through RPL, could be a diploma with X number of years of working experience, 5 years or whatever is stipulated, that is related to the field of study. And here various selection tools could be used for presenting and or verifying the evidence. But the bottom line is that applicants must provide evidence of having attained sufficient competency against the NQF level 7 descriptors for the postgraduate diploma for admission to an NQF 8 level qualification, which is the PGDIP or Bachelor Honours. When considering selection criteria, it is important to think about what specific and or general competencies applicants must have in order to succeed on your program. So, for instance, do they need an average of 60% on a bachelor's degree? And if so, what does this mean? Does it mean 60% overall or for the final year? Or does it mean 60% in the core or major subjects? So what does that 60% mean? Is it overall? Is it average? What is it? Also, what about foreign qualifications? How do you stipulate that? What pass mark or what indicator of excellent academic achievement do you think should be in place? What other selection criteria and procedures could you consider that are inclusive and fair, that would promote mobility within and across the NQF? And here you would refer to your policy on articulation, because admissions, selection, and articulation are very closely bound together. So draw on your articulation policy as well when you are putting together your admissions policy. How are the selection criteria to be applied in a fair and consistent manner? And can applicants appeal against selection decisions if they feel they've been wrongly judged? What is your RPL policy? How's that going to inform your selection? If you do have an RPL policy in place, or if you are going to select applicants through RPL, is there support for students where there are knowledge and skills gaps? Will there be a bridging course? Will there be additional modules for non-degree purposes? Or will there be other forms of supplementary work for them to complete before they can enter or enroll for the course? But the details of RPL will be dealt with in another presentation by Frederica de Graaf. So I won't go into too much detail here. Finally, if you are going to consider how applicants from other programs could be admitted to your program, you would need to compare these qualifications and programs with yours. So you would need to consider the nature and purpose of each qualification, the exit level outcomes and associated assessment criteria, the total credit value of the qualification, and the exit NQF level, which would need to be one level below the entry level of your program. Pardon me. In addition, you would need to take into account the volume of learning as determined by the scope and depth of subject knowledge, the cognitive demand of the program that students are applying with, the disciplinary context, the field of study and area of specialization, teaching, learning and assessment approaches and practices, as well as professional body requirements. This analysis is what you would also undertake for identifying articulation pathways and for a comparative analysis of your qualification with other national and international qualifications that are going to inform your rationale and justification for your program and your qualification. So now you can see how all these considerations are interlinked and that these preparations are essential before you can start designing your academic program. Thank you.